Yes, so welcome everyone to our talk about the DBT model. I'm Thibault. I'm managing one of our squads, focusing on carpool drivers, and I will be sharing the stage with Tushar, who is one of our senior data engineer and our data engineer lead. And we will be talking about our journey to migrating DBT. We build the presentation in 4 parts. Yes, I'll start with explaining how we decided where we would want to go. Mainly, first decision we made on DBT. Then Tushar will talk about how we build what we call enablers, so the stuff we needed to deploy our first DBT model. Then we'll talk about the migration of the pipeline. The capital "the", you will understand why. Tushar will do that as well, and I'll be finishing with probably the best part, right? After this migration, you try to get the benefits of DBT. The way we'll try to run this, so 2 things. We'll try to do a mix of technical choices for technical discussion and organization, how we organize ourselves for this migration. 10 minutes by section. It was easy for us, and we'll try to talk for 5 to 8 minutes, take a few questions on the part we just discussed, and then move to the next part. This piece of organization is experimental, so bear with us for the question. We'll try to fit that contract. Very briefly, what are we doing at BlaBlaCar? Historical business is carpool, long distance and short distance. Since then, we extended to other business units, mostly around bus. And since the beginning of the year, we have trains in BlaBlaCar, in Spain. And to power that, we have a data team, so a central data team. There are 50 people in it, 5 job family, data analyst, data engineer, data scientist, ML engineers, and data ops. They are split into several teams. Most of the team have all the skill sets, and they are aligned with one business unit. So that's a data mesh, and that will have an importance in what we'll talk about. And to give a few numbers on our warehouse, we have 4,000 or 6,000, depends on how you count. So a lot of tables, 300 Tableau reports, and all of that some of that has been around for 10 years, so there'll be a bit of history into that. I know it's 4 o'clock, you're probably tired, etc. So to wake you up, I bring up the beautiful background of the Forward Data Conference that's completely conflicts with the rest of the presentation, but that shocking color choice should wake you up a bit. Part 1, deciding on the direction. So what did we do? When we migrated to DBT, we start by aligning on the problem. Problem was, operation of our pipeline is complicated. Added a new pipeline is complex, takes time. So let's try to improve that, our data platform, and migrate to DBT. Then we build a core group. Both of us were in that group. We had a few more people in that, and we didn't do that alone. We get help, and I'll get to that in a few slides. Shortly, why did we pick DBT? Interestingly enough, I think it's the first time in my career that we made a technical choice without looking at competition, so no benchmark, no nothing. We said, okay, we want a data transformation tool. There is one name that comes over and over again, is DBT, so let's go with DBT, let's not try something else. Main issue at the time was dependency management in Airflow, so how you run a task before the other. So DBT helped with that. Something we like about DBT is it's kind of an opinionated framework. It expects you to work in a certain way, and it forces you to work this way. And that, we believe, that's one of the reasons why it's easier to write those pipelines with DBT. And I think that was successful. So about the expert and the acceleration, so we hired Christophe, I guess you know him, who was still freelancing at the time. I don't know if he's still freelancing, but at the time he was doing freelance. How did he helped us? Well, first he helped us understand what DBT would, what choice we had to make, and what would be the impact. We had zero knowledge of DBT at the time, and no one in the team had knowledge, by the way. So he helped us make an informed decision. We had a pair of fresh eyes on our crazy pipeline, 10 years old, etc. That was good as well to have someone external looking at it. He built a couple of prototypes, mostly helping us to understand what would be okay, what would be hard. And he helped us scout future problem, meaning stuff we will have in 6 months, 12 months. One of those problems was we would lost our main SQL development tool, which was BigQuery UI. So we are on GCP, on BigQuery. And every developer was very comfortable and very used to type their SQL in the BigQuery UI, then copy-paste on Git, make a Airflow task with it. And as you probably know, that doesn't work with DBT. You have all those nice curly braces everywhere. So one thing we spent quite some time discussing was how we would manage this developer experience. And we picked a Visual Studio with the DBT Power User extension. So that's one of the things we discussed a lot with Christophe, and one problem we would probably have missed in the initial plan if we hadn't someone, without someone with experience. And on the other decision we took, we kept our monorepo on Git, and we had probably some people in the audience are familiar with this question, core versus cloud. It was 2 years ago, and we didn't pick cloud. We kept DBT core. Why? Very shortly, 2 years ago, there was no feature that we found extremely compelling, and it was costly. Today, it's still costly, but it has a bit more feature that we like, and we like the direction in which they are going, so we are considering reintroducing it back. Not for this year, though. Too expensive.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Thibault. So the next thing which we'll discuss about is the enablers. So Thibault presented us the strategy, the problematic, what was happening. And next, we'll discuss about the enablers. So this is one step before we started the migration. It's basically the tooling and some other decisions which we needed to take before we can kickstart the migration. So looking back at the path of how we move forward with the framework and the different things. So with Christophe, we did like a lot of discussions. We had an expert who presented to us a lot of topics, some design discussions. So the first thing which we did was backlog refinement and planning. So we have a list of items. We wanted to build some kind of a framework by which we can introduce DBT in production. And how can we introduce that? How can we build that? So there was a little bit of refinement and planning which was required. Then the next thing which we went for is in the delivery phase. So we started quickly building the DBT DAG generator. So this is an internal name. So this is basically the internal script which we built, which will be putting all the DBT models in production. After that, immediately, there were two things which we had to do. We have to onboard the data engineers. So as Thibault mentioned, we did not had a lot of knowledge on DBT internally. So we have to onboard all the data engineers. So one important thing is we started with data engineers because they were the ones who were owning the most complex pipelines. They were doing the most complex transformation SQL. And at this stage, the framework which we built was sufficiently technical. So there was still some software engineering best practices which were involved in that. And opening the framework at this time to the rest of the data services, to rest of the data population, it can be a bit challenging. So we started with data engineers. So we did basic DBT onboarding, really basics of DBT, what is a model, what is a project, what is run command. And then we onboarded them on the DBT framework, which we were building with the platform engineers. The other thing which we did is we also did like the iteration on the framework. So because it was like a brand new framework which we were introducing, there will be some issues in that. We had to weed out all the imperfections in the tool. And for doing that, we took really simple pipelines, 2 models, 3 models, and we just tried to run them in production, which gave a hands-on experience to all the data engineers, and we could easily iterate on the tool and give feedback on improving some things. So we'll deep dive a little bit. Before the internal script, we'll talk about some mode decisions which we took. So the first one is regarding the orchestration. So for the orchestration, we are on Airflow. We are using Cloud Composer, which is the Google managed Airflow, and we are quite happy with it. So we are managing the entire life cycle, basically the ingestion, transformation, reverse ETLs, and other things on Airflow. So we wanted to keep that. And the another challenge which dbt introduced to us was dbt natively it introduces a concept called dbt run. So you take a project and you just run the project. But for our size, where we had hundreds of models, we didn't want it to make it a black box. Like, we should not have a single task in which you put all the dbt run, and we cannot see what is happening, what is failing. So what we decided was, instead of a single task, we'll go for a graph view. So I'll show you what the graph view will look like in the next steps. The other thing which we looked into is the DAG sizes. Should we have a single dbt project, or should we have multiple projects? So you see the slides and the presentation, the topic of a presentation, 1,000 models. So of course we started small, but our aim was quite big. We wanted to move all our pipelines or most active DAGs to dbt. And at that time, we were not sure that at that stage, Composer or dbt can handle thousands of models which are running at a different stage. So at that time, we decided that we'll go for multiple dbt projects instead of a single dbt project. And the last was the dependencies. So now we have created different dbt projects. We have some pipelines which are doing the ingestion, some pipelines which are doing the reverse ETLs. And now we wanted to join all these pipelines together. And for doing that, we use sensors. So if you're not familiar with sensors is basically a task instance in Airflow, which is just pinging a particular task, making sure if it is success or if it has failed. So by this, we were able to connect everything together. Then we'll talk about the dbt DAG generator framework. So this is the internal framework which we built, which is basically putting dbt in production. So how it works, so it's very high level. We'll not go too much in details at this stage. So how it works, so we have a CI/CD pipeline on Jenkins, which builds the dbt projects and generates a manifest. So if you are familiar with dbt, you know it generates a manifest.json with all the dependencies and all the models it contains. And then we created this custom script, which is the DAG generator, which we call, which reads this manifest and dynamically generates an Airflow DAG. So each task, a model, a snapshot, an operation, or whatever it is an individual Airflow task. So key features for this framework, as I said earlier, so each model instance is an Airflow task. We built it using the Python virtual env operator. It was important to use this operator because by this we can keep the environment of dbt different from that of Composer, so that they don't integrate or create issues later. All the dbt sources, they will be converted to sensors based on metadata is defined. So you can imagine I have some ingestion which is going on. It is a source. As soon as the ingestion is finished, I want my dbt model to run. So by defining some metadata, a sensor was created. And all the dbt dependencies, basically in dbt you define the dependencies using references, which is your from which table you want to run your query. So all of them are converted into Airflow task dependencies. So how does it look like? It looks like something like this. So you see the big graph which is on the corner. So that is basically generated dynamically. So it's not humans it's not the data engineers, or it's not us who is generating this big graph. Based on the complexity of it, you can see it's quite complicated. And it does not have a lot of models. It has close to 70 or 100 models. So how does it work? So on the left, you can see we just passed the dbt project path, and the script is dynamically generating the Airflow DAG for you. All the dependencies between the tasks are also automatically generated. If you see the sources section, which is on the left corner, you will see based on some metadata defined, but like the DAG ID, the task ID, it will create an external task sensor for you. So all the things which are in dark blue, dark gray kind of, they are all the sensors which are also dynamically generated by passing some metadata. So we talked about the enablers. So now we have the list of things. We have some tools and the framework by which we can put dbt in production. And now we'll migrate the pipeline basically. So going again on how we went with the project. So we started by building some tooling. So we built some more tooling because we are introducing this new framework to a team of 6 data engineers, and later it will be used by everyone else also, like close to 50 ICs who will be working on DBT. So we wanted to build some tooling by which we can increase the speed of migration, and we'll be migrating thousands of tasks, which will be going for a couple of months, even for a year, I will say. We started also doing the planning for the migration. So we started with our most complex pipeline. We did not start it with something less ROI, but with the one which will have the maximum ROI, the one which was creating the maximum pain for data engineers. So we started with the most complex and core pipeline. We identified the timeline, how much resources will be required, and then we kickstarted the migration. I'll go in more details like how much time and resources it took for the migration, but we successfully completed the migration. After doing that, we started going a bit in the decentralized direction. So as up to point 8, everything was happening in a centralized manner. So we had built a group of experts with the data engineers, with the software engineers, and we were doing everything in a centralized manner. But in our organization, where we are organized as a data mesh, where data engineers are embedded in data squads, it becomes difficult to get resources in a centralized manner. So what we wanted to do was to do the rest of the migration, which is going to be a couple of months, in a decentralized manner. And for doing that, we had to create a group of experts. So what we created is called DBT Dragons. So in BlaBlaCar, we love animals, and we have a lot of teams with a lot of animals in them. But we created a team called DBT Dragons, and one of the main responsibilities for them was helping in the migration, but also helping owning the backlog, introducing the different improvements in the DBT architecture. So deep diving a bit more into what tooling we built. So the first one is around installation and setup. So it looks very simple, but imagine you have to do the installation and setup for close to 50 people who will be working on multiple DBT projects. So it's something which is quite simple, but it will take a lot of time, and everyone has to repeat the same things over and over again. So we built a very lightweight CLI, which with just like a few input, it will be able to create your projects, your profiles, everything will be set up quickly. Then the second thing which we did was create query generator. So query generator, it was basically a script which was converting our standard SQL, which was in BigQuery, to more DBT format. So basically changing your froms to references and sources like this. Another thing which we have to be careful with the query generator is DBT does not follow DDLs. DDLs in which you have to specify like the schema of your table, whereas before we were specifying the schema of a table, saying this column has to be string, this has to be int, and stuff like this. Whereas with DBT, it's a bit more free flowing, so you have to be careful. So query generator also added a level of test in which we can conserve the schema of the table. And the last thing which we did was we created a module on data quality. So we will be migrating our most complex pipelines, our core pipelines. If there is any data quality issue, it's going to be impacted, and it will be directly impacting the stakeholders. So we created a data quality module, which will be helping us in doing the double run. So we did the migration in double run. So our core pipeline is running as is, and some of the models on DBT. And for each model, we are doing a data quality check, a check which is for a couple of days, making sure it's green for, let's say, 3 or 4 days, and then we migrate it to DBT. So this was some lightweight tooling which we did, and it took a little bit of resources, but in the long run, it was quite useful to do that. Then talking about the migration, the planning and the migration. So the code word for this project is spaghetti. So as you can understand, we are in data mesh, everything is interconnected. So the pipeline which we started with is the spaghetti pipeline. So it has 120 models. We are going to tackle it with 6 ICs, 6 data engineers will be working on that. And we did like a rough estimation of 5 sprints. So 5 sprints. So we have 1 sprint for 2 weeks. So the project for 120 models was around 10 weeks, which is still quite a lot. So an estimation which we did was a quite rough estimation. We did like 2 tables per day per IC. This was based on certain things, like some tables are full refresh, some are easy to migrate. But this was not true for everything. There were some models which we had which were running for like a couple of days to migrate them. The next thing is gamification and reporting. So there will be, this project is going to be long. There will be a lot of eyes on the project. So we build some automatic reporting for project progress and raise delays. So reduce some overhead time for the data engineers to do some reporting. Next thing which we had to be careful about is migration fatigue. So long-term project, something which will be repetitive for all the different data engineers. So to reduce the migration fatigue, we divided the teams into two. We created 2 teams of the data engineers, 3 data engineers in each team who will be working in alternative sprints. We created some kind of rituals in which we'll do handover, we'll do some share and learns. And the last thing which we did was communication. We invested heavily on communication to share the learnings, but also share if we were finding some issues. So in general, these were the main things which we did. And the last thing which we worked on is on the DBT Dragons. So that is our famous logo. So what this group is, it's basically a group of experts. So the group consists of data platform engineers, data engineers, and data analysts. And the role of this group was building the onboarding for the rest of the data services. So we have done the migration. We have moved 120 models, but now we have to migrate thousands of models. So we wanted to also onboard the rest of the people in the data services, which are close to 50 ICs. Thibault will talk more about the onboarding process. Other responsibility for them was supporting the migration. So as the migration is now happening in different squads, it's decentralized. So this group is also responsible for helping them in doing the migration. They were also developing additional features, like adding more features in the generator, building the dev environment, and other improvements which we found. And the last and quite important for us is also taking the feedback from the users. So it's a brand new way of working. You have a brand new dev experience. You have a brand new way of putting your pipelines in production. So we wanted to take the feedback from the users and try to identify what improvements we can do.
All right, last part, getting to the benefit of that. So yeah, now that the big pipeline is migrated, it's time to onboard everyone. Then for everyone, for us, meant a lot of different profile, data analysts mostly. And yeah, that was an interesting journey. I'll have a few anecdotes, I guess, later. 18 months after the beginning of the project, we migrated all our models. So we landed around 1,200 models. So we did some sort of 80-20 here, is that we asked the squads to tell us what was the more important, more strategic pipelines and the one they wanted to migrate on DBT. And we left aside some non-DBT friendly use cases. Stuff like don't work well as a select, and some kind of non-strategic pipeline, never breaks, etc. So we kept some of them in out of DBT, but most of our stack is DBT, which is cool. And now, when we think of something in terms of pipeline, we think as how will we implement it in DBT, and then we look at the few other use cases that remain around of that. And then there is all the improvements that we did to our stack, and that I'll describe a bit more. Onboarding everyone, yeah, I don't know if it was harder than anticipated, because I personally thought it would be hard, but it was really hard actually. And I think the anecdote was the first page that we received as a contribution, as an internal contribution to our doc, was a cheat sheet. So okay, so far so good. But the cheat sheet was on Git, not on DBT. It was on Git, because yeah, the people we were talking to were not used to Git, or less used than we thought, and they would needed help to commit, resolve a conflict, etc. on Git. So we spent quite a lot of time writing documentation, and interestingly, the documentation, we realized that the documentation should serve multiple purposes. You want to explain how it works. you want to have reference page because people want to do something and they know kind of how it works, but they don't remember exactly the commands, and they just look for the steps they have to do, something so fast and narrow. You have a discovery problem. That's very true for VS Code for us. People don't know what VS Code can do for them, and it's actually very hard to give them the tips or the feature that are in something like VS Code. I'll skip the rest. I'll take your question if you have on the rest. Then I'll talk about some of the features we added to our framework or our DBT platform. And maybe those ones were not the one I was really expected to see first. But one thing that really came out strong and as the first requirement was help me release DBT code safely and push safely code in production. We did a couple of things for that. We're introducing something we call individual dataset. So every developer has a dataset for them on BigQuery. And the way DBT is set up is that if you run DBT run on your laptop, the model you're running will be materialized in your dataset. Hopefully, it won't cost too much. You have to pay a bit attention, right? But we did everything we can to reduce the cost, and that's how you can safely see that your code works, etc. And in terms of test in the CI/CD, we introduce an open source package called DBT Dry Run, and that thing will use the Dry Run API from BigQuery. So that's a classic BigQuery API. You submit your SQL, and BigQuery tells you, yeah, it will run, or no, I don't understand your SQL. Please fix it. Doesn't catch everything, but it catches the SQL mistakes. So typically missing comma, that it will catch. It's also the query that gives you the cost. It's the API, that gives you the cost of your query, if you're curious. So that was the first one. And the second discussion we had was around flexibility. So why flexibility? Because if you remember the framework Tushar described, it's very much thought as a framework that will take whatever DBT model out there and put it into your DAG without having you to worry about Python, Airflow, etc. That's very much abstracted away from you. And that's very cool because you can onboard people who are not familiar with Python, Airflow to that framework. But it's also very constrained. And when you want to run something else from DBT, typically use DBT seeds, the framework will just tell you, I don't know what a DBT seed is. I just can run DBT run. And then ton of conflict of how we would do that. So not conflict, but frustration, maybe I would say, of people who wanted to use more of DBT features. So we went, so we changed course, and we we allow people to write a bit more Python so that they can run any DBT command they want. So in that sense, we move away from the drop your model and it will run on Airflow to you can still do that, but you can also write your own Python and it will execute your DBT command you want. And the bet is that on the long run, we'll re-implement those commands, DBT seed typically, in the DAG generator. The goal being, at the end of the day, you can drop your seed definition. The DAG generator will understand it should run DBT seed at the right moment, will run it for you without having you to write Python. Don't know if this part was clear. If it's not, I'm happy to take questions. I have one more slide. Next step. So the first one is the one I described, support more command in our DAG generator. Another interesting issue we saw is the number of DBT projects we had. I think someone from Decathlon in this morning talk mentioned going from 100 to 10s. We are going from 50s DBT project to I don't know how many because we haven't finished, but way less. So the issue came from the design choice we made to have one DBT project equals one DAG, and that's it. And if you do that, people who come to DBT will naturally create a new DBT project for whatever idea they have, drop 3 models in that, and be done. That's kind of okay. The management of 50s DBT project is a pain, and we didn't want to keep that, so we are reducing the number of DBT projects And we introduce in the Python in Airflow the node selector, so that's the classical DBT feature, and that allow you to express that you want to create a DAG from this DBT project, but only for these models and not those one. And that's how we separate the DAGs from the DBT project. Only then we'll start leveraging more of the DBT features. We still need to look at how we'll use DBT doc, because we haven't invested in that yet. That'll come. Tests, unit tests, and all the other features of DBT, they are not there yet. And I think that will resonate to the audience and also there. Yes, we do have a lot of tech debt also in that to clean. Typically, one of the decisions we made in the migration is don't change the business logic. It's going to be too risky, take too long. So whatever was there, we migrated to DBT. Whatever didn't fit in DBT, it's in a pre-hook and a post-hook. Very bad place to be in. So all of that should be removed and reintegrated better in DBT. Okay, I think we'll stop there. Thanks, everyone. We'll be around if you have more questions.